For my quest, I kept track of my spending from September 30 all the way to December 12. Out of the 2.5 months, I made purchases on 23 of those days. I spent money in 5 different categories. I made 36 different purchases, and in total, I spent $618.11. I also calculated my spending statistics with the average amount of money I'd spend being $17.17. However, after taking out my abnormally large purchases, which I figured out using the outlier formula, I figured that my average spending was $14.82. My cheapest purchase was $2. My most expensive purchase was $99.13. I spent my money in 5 different categories, and I highlighted the month that I spent them the most in. I spent the most amount of money on food in October, and I had 12 purchases on food in October. I only spent my money on the class office category in November. The same thing applies to the beauty category. For accessories, 3 out of the 4 purchases were in October. For gifts, all of my gift purchases were in December. And I spent most of the time when I would buy needs, it was during October. And I spent the most on wants in November. I also did my category statistics purchases. So out of the 36 purchases I made, 23 of them were about food. 4 of them were accessories, 6 of them were beauty related, 1 of them was class office related, and 2 of them were gifts. My budget, 49.1% of my budget went to food, 5% went to accessories, 30.4% went to beauty, 0.5% went to class office, and 15% went to gifts. 13 of the 36 purchases I had were needs, and the other 23 were wants. And as for the percentage of my budget, 41% of my budget was spent on needs, which was $256.61, and 58.5% of my spending was on wants, which was $361.50. I also analyzed my spending by month. So in October and the first day of September, out of the 32 days tracked, I spent money only on 10 days in 2 different categories. I made 15 purchases, and I spent a total of $189.83. Once again, I calculated my spending statistics with the average amount of money I spent being $12.99, and after taking out abnormally large purchases, in total I spent $8.65. Or on average, I would spend $8.65. My cheapest purchase was $6.21, and my most expensive purchase was $35.26. I also tracked down my category statistics in paper here, which you can see better explained through my pie charts. So out of the $189.83 I spent, 86.4% of it was on food, which in total was $163.92, and the other 13.6% was on accessories, which was $25.91. In October, I made 15 purchases, 12 of them being food, which was 80%, and the other 20% being accessories, which is 3 purchases. As for my spending percentage, 62.2% of it was on wants, which in total was $116.87, and the other 37.8% was on needs, which was $72.96. Out of my 15 purchases, 6 of them were needs and 9% were wants. Or 9 of them were wants. I did the same thing in November, and out of the 30 days, I only spent money on 7 days, However, I spent it in more categories than October. Instead of 2, I spent it on 4. I made only 13 purchases, but I ended up spending much more money, that being $250.82. Once again, I calculated my spending statistics with the average amount of money being $19.29, and after taking out abnormally large purchases, on average, I would spend $12.64. The minimum purchase, or my cheapest purchase, was $2.19, and my most expensive purchase was $99.13. In total, I spent $66.05 on food, $5 on accessories, $176.78 on beauty, $2.99 on class office. I spent $40 on my needs and $210.83 on my wants. This is better explained with my pie chart graphs, where 70% of my budget went to beauty, 26.3% went to food, and 2% went to accessories. Out of the 13 purchases, 5 of them were beauty related, 6 of them were food related, 1 of them was accessories, and the last one was class office. And as for my needs and wants, 84.1% of my budget was spent on wants, and 15.9% of my budget was spent on needs. And out of the 13 purchases, 10 were wants and 3 were needs. And with the last month being December, I only spent money on 6 of the 12 days that I tracked, and only in 2 different categories. My total was $177.46, and I made 8 purchases. Once again, I did my spending statistics with the average amount of money I spent being $22.18, and in this case, there was no abnormally large or abnormally small purchases. The cheapest purchase I had was $3, and the most expensive one I had was $56.77. Once again, I kept track of all of my category spending, which I tracked in my pie charts. Here you can see that 47.8% of my budget was spent on food, and 52.2% of my budget was spent on gifts. And out of the 8 purchases I made, 6 of them were food, being 75% of my purchases, and 2 of them were gifts, making up the other 25%. As for my budget, 19% of it was spent on wants, and the other 81% was spent on needs. The amount I spent on needs was $143.66, and the amount I spent on wants was $33.80. Out of the 8 purchases I made, 4 of them were needs and 4 of them were wants. Another statistic that I looked at was how much I spent on boba, because I was aware that a lot of my money was spent on that, and it turned out that 15% of my budget was spent on boba, and I spent $92.20 on boba alone. And just to give context, my budget, or the total amount I spent on gifts, was $92.72, which made up 15% of my budget as well. I bought boba 14 times. However, this only includes the times I bought boba with my own money and not in general. And out of the 12, we had 12 weeks, meaning that I most likely bought boba at least once a week. What I learned after analyzing my spending was that a majority of it was on wants, and although I would say I want to limit my spending, if we take in the context of the months I analyzed, the months were my birthday month, and one of them was also December, meaning I would have to buy gifts for my friends and family. So it was inevitable that I would spend more money than usual. I think in order to truly improve my spending habits, I would have to do it in a more a month with less uncommon circumstances. However, I think after tracking this, there's still a lot of room for improvement, and that I learned that I can limit the quantities of things that I buy instead of just the amount of purchases.